Good evening, friends. Welcome to another Word of Gord. Average Folks in the Afterlife, number 88, I think. Moving right along with Frederick Sculthorp's Excursions to the Spirit World. Out-of-body journeys he seems to have taken from the 1930s to at least the late 1950s. The book was published in '61. And quite a remarkable series of adventures it is too. Very cutting edge, very clear, very precise about a number of details which other books of the same nature, or even just articles of the same nature, were just not as detailed or as insightful. Anyway, it's a classic, and I think we should just go on examining it. This section is called The Brighter Spheres. It gets better as it goes along. The apparent simplicity of spiritual truths is never more evident than when one is on the brilliant plains. I say brilliant because the whiteness overhead is something like that of midday nearer the tropics, but with no discomfort. The effect upon me in these states is always the same. I seemed to know more, or have greater access to knowledge. And I would agree with that from my own experience. The farther you go, the higher you get, and the more you understand. And that includes understanding and maybe not being able to fully express what you understand. The vibration of such places have a very pleasant effect on the sensitive spirit body, and to be with others of that plane is better still, as they emit a feeling of great friendship. This radiation of friendliness is very sincere and noticeable, owing, I expect, to the greater extent of their auras, which I cannot see in these bright states. I have been able to see the auras of the advanced ones only when they show in greater contrast to the dull astral planes. This continuously emitted friendship towards others can be interpreted as unselfishness and consideration for others in all ways. This sounds simple, but it can mean a great deal. There is a complete absence of class, sets, or cliques. There are no critical thoughts or lionizing to some to the exclusion of others. Note that, no lionizing of some to the exclusion of others. Think of our celebrity system, our star system, our nature of prophets. Won't mention any names. Spiritual leaders of all kinds. There are no sects, dogmas, or denominations with their earthly trimmings that have led to so much division and bloodshed throughout history. Well, that I would disagree with. There are subplanes or areas of the astral plane where there are the kind of very rule-bound, conservative, traditional religious sects that have very strong ideas of who gets to be in heaven and who doesn't. And they exist, and they try to maintain their integrity. And if you followed some of my other videos, you'll remember adventures where I and, people like me rather enjoy stealing into the areas that these groups live in. Some quite big areas, there's hundreds of thousands of them. And they don't like us, the caretakers and the gatekeepers don't like us being there. And we'll catch on. We're there to sort of help the ones who are beginning to doubt the veracity and sincerity of it all, but are a little scared to move on by themselves. We help people like that leave, and the gatekeepers and guards who see themselves as protectors and shepherds, of course, shepherds of the flock, not guards of the imprisoned. It's It's all about perception and definition, really, isn't it? Anyway, they don't like us being there, but we go anyway. It is all very simple. These people are doing what a few spiritual teachers down the ages have taught, and which translated means love one another. Boy, that's pretty simple. We can imagine the improvement there would be if we did this on earth as it is in heaven, because it has a wonderful effect there. Millions have repeated this in their prayers without knowing the real meaning of it. Again, to put it simply, it means that if our attitude towards each other on earth was the same as the one on the higher planes, the whole standard of earth life would be raised. This is no miracle. There is a cause for everything, which is with its consequent effect. The great mind that is spirit encompasses everything, even to the most remote atom. Sir James Jeans, the scientist, wrote in The Mysterious Universe, "The universe is beginning to look more like a great thought than a great machine." This is true, but belated. There was no beginning. The great mind always was. Certainly that thought machine metaphor, Jeans must have wrote that many years ago, because I'm almost certain I read it in a Colin Wilson book, 40 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. So it sounds like the sort of thing Wilson would quote, doesn't it? When wireless telegraphy was in the experimental stage, it was found necessary to tune into a wavelength. Many scientists, after passing into spirit life, have been astounded to find that an ethereal substance or matter, perhaps particles or the newly designated subatoms, there's a book showing its age, the newly designated subatoms, also exist in space, vibrating at different rates. The spirit body also has to tune into this to receive its impressions. This is probably the substance of the spirit realms and the different rates of vibration, and would correspond to the different stages of progress. Objects and places in spirit look the same as on earth, and just as solid, although at times I have found an added interest in closer inspection. For instance, with full consciousness and in tune with a plane in spirit, the sight is keener than the best earthly eyes can ever be. There is a more stereoscopic effect, and the things stand out in greater clearness and colour, even to the most minute details. Looking at an ordinary brick wall in spirit once, I could see every grain in the mortar and the rough surface of the bricks, and it was, I thought, rather beautiful. Keen photographers would call it perfection in focus, depth, and colour. From the excavation of the early moon, with their tablets telling of, from the excavations of the early Minos, M-I-N-O-S, with their tablets telling of clairvoyant leaders, down through history there are records of sensitive people who have contacted these spirit wavelengths of the fuller life. They have belonged to all races and tribes, including the clans with their Highlanders' second sight, like the clairvoyant lady I knew on earth and met in spirit. She was a simple Scotswoman. Ha ha, said by an Englishman, I bet. Simple Scotswoman, yeah, we'll all take offence at that. The various names for the happier states, i.e. heaven, nirvana, paradise, Valhalla, Elysium, happy hunting grounds, all have the same meaning, as well as those for the lower regions. And it does not seem strange to me now that seers of all ages agree in substance. After many experiences in the spirit states, one becomes a sort of spirit psychologist, and guesswork is eliminated as one continually senses the inner and real minds of people. As my lessons proceeded, I could see how very necessary it is that all should have some knowledge of spirit, and that it is much easier to learn the basic essentials on earth than it is on entry into spirit life. This must seem strange to some, but if the mind on earth is blank concerning spiritual truths, it is still blank on entry into spirit. How long this handicap can last, I have shown by a few examples I have recounted in my experiences of the plane of illusion. I have said that on a higher plane I seemed to know more or have some broader access to knowledge. On the higher frequencies, the mind is open to higher guidance. Bearing this in mind, I once contacted the thoughts of a newcomer to spirit who was sitting quietly and gaining strength in a bright state. The thought seemed to contain the query, "What have I done to deserve all this happiness and pleasure?" It was certainly earned in some way. There are no mistakes in God's laws. Again, I wouldn't call them God's laws. I would just call them the natural affinity for vibrational harmony. The vibration that you have upon passing, the general vibration, harmonizes automatically with the harmony of one of the planes, the vibrational harmony. And you go to where your comfort zone is, even if you don't realize it's your comfort zone. To me, that's not God's laws. That's just harmonizing of energetic principles. Although maybe that's just, just language. A person whose inner nature was friendly and considerate to others during earth life would automatically gravitate to the same wavelength as spirit, even if that person was ignorant of spirit or religion. The state would naturally be bright, and the spirit would inherit the greater powers and broader access to knowledge pertaining to that state, and progress would be pleasant and easy. It would be as well to remember that this spirit would not be separated from relations and friends not so progressed, as the higher can always go to the lower. And that's certainly in the spiritualism channelings of an earlier, this book's 50 years old or whatever, of 100, 120 years, the same point is made over and over. The higher can always go to the lower, but not the other way around. There is no hope of getting by with the crowd. Each of us is a separate union. Each has to learn however long it takes. To any person we can say, "You are unique. There has never before been another person like you, nor will there ever be, because no two persons during their existence have had exactly the same thoughts." So there's a lot of more or less the same, but not exactly. Therefore, you have made your own personal wavelength, and that is why a telepathic thought reaches its objective. Only your receiving and transmitting station has that wavelength. Our present-day knowledge of radio helps us to realize the exceedingly fine divisions in any wave band that would be needed to allot a personal wavelength to each one of so many millions of people. Truly, as a spirit visitor to a circle said, spirit is like electricity, only more subtle. I should at this point draw attention to the fact that all my experiences in the next world mainly concern the British or European states. This was, no doubt, because I could more easily follow the lines of thought and ways of living of my own kind. When it is realized that every race and country on earth has its own wavelength and spirit, each conformingly perfectly to the spirit law, the vastness of the God thought does indeed surpass all imagination. The great mathematician and the great architect are but two of the appellations given by the advanced ones in spirit to great creative thought. There is free will on the earth plane and also in the spirit plane. Will means to wish or desire, whether it is followed by action or not. The exercise of free will on a spirit plane cannot affect those of a higher plane, any higher plane. But on earth, as we all know, acts can affect any of us, and even the thoughts of others can impinge upon us because we are living on the same material plane. However, the spirit body that encompasses the physical body, which St. Paul called the natural body, during earth life needs not to be affected by the thoughts of others if they are not good. A thought is an electrical impulse that flashes out and is retained by the tape recorder properties of the spirit body. Only one's own self-generating thoughts have the power to make this lasting impression. And it is these cumulative thoughts that determine the status of the spirit body. In other words, it is not that which comes in that defiles, but that which goes out. The higher speed of thought and life on the bright planes compared with our set of ideas of time, it really is hard to understand. But it is relative and only noticeable when comparisons are made. In the summer of 1957, I spent a week's holiday with my wife in spirits in one night. I had projected and joined my wife in a place that I can only describe as a sylvan fairyland of trees and water. We were on the grassy banks of a placid stream overshadowed by trees. Shadows are hardly possible on this bright plain, but the beauty of light and shade was enhanced by the shafts of light from the brilliance overhead, which emphasized the fresh greenness of everything. A poet or writer could fill chapters with descriptions of the beauties of this idyllic scene, and it would still be incomplete because, as always, there is the sensitivity of the spirit body, which is infused by the vibrations of the sphere. Well, you can imagine what I think about that, having written about the afterlife over and over. Sometimes with other people's words, I might add. But often just straight onto the grass. As worry or distraction is a vibration of thought and happens to be a lower wavelength of thought, my feelings on this higher vibration of being was of extreme happiness and love, a general love of everything, so it seemed. Before we left this place, I was impressed with the idea of 1 week, and it seemed as such, although there are no nights to mark the passing of the days. We were transported, and then I saw that we were hovering over an area on the Sinai side of the Suez Canal near Suez, called Shalufa. It was a place where I had had some happy times bathing during the First World War, and I was glad to be able to show my wife one of the more cushy spots during the war period, and not a battlefield. We rose high and with a panorama of the desert beneath us. I said to my wife, "There are some nice beaches near Alexandria, where once we went." We ended our holiday standing on one of the shady stretches and looking at the sea. Then I was taken back to my physical body. In contrast to the higher planes, the dull astral localities seem to have a kind of time in regard to the duration of an activity that is nearer to our earthly man. One remarkable facility of the spirit body that is soon noticed is the power of telescopic sight. It is quite automatic, like the focus of the physical eye in the desire to see more clearly. If one is interested in a person, perhaps 200 yards away, all the personal features and colors of the eyes can be seen, yet the image is not enlarged, nor is the surrounding landscape, as it would be with a telescope. It seems as if a portion of one's own aura projection forms the surge of inquiry. After writing the above, that same night in bed, I projected my spirit helpers as if to emphasize the faculty, gave me an opportunity to exercise it more fully. I was taken to the side of a mountain which overlooked a wide valley. The vibrations were pleasant and uplifting and denoted a higher plane of existence. It was like a bright summer's day, and as my sight took in the scene, I noticed miles away 2 figures seated on a grassy knoll. Well, seem to be nodding off there. It's late at night, but it's not that late. One remarkable facility of the spirit body that is soon noticed is the power of telescopic sight. It is quite automatic, like the focus of the physical eye and the desire to see more clearly. If one is interested in a person perhaps 200 yards away, all the personal features and color of the eyes can be seen, yet the image is not enlarged nor is the surrounding landscape, as it would be with a telescope. It seems as if the portion of one's aura projects a surge of inquiry. He keeps putting the word seems in italic here in the text, and I can see why he wants to emphasize the notion, because when one is experiencing the astral and the mental planes, you're aware of how you can create perceptions, even more so than you can do here on Earth. Your presumptions, prejudgments, definitions you were taught in school, they all combine to make one unholy bargain that you have to deal with, and a challenging unholy bargain at that. After writing the above that same night in bed, I projected, and my spirit helpers, as if to emphasize this faculty, gave me an opportunity to exercise it more fully. I was taken to the side of a mountain which overlooked a wide valley. The vibrations were pleasant and uplifting and denoted a higher plane of existence. It was like a bright summer's day, and my sight took in the scene. I noticed miles away 2 figures seated on a grassy knoll. As my interest focused on them, so did the automatic power of telescopic sight gradually increase, and I saw 2 people side by side. I then saw that one was a man, an Indian, very splendidly dressed, and I sensed a prince who was spiritually advanced. His turban and 3/4 length coat were white, and had jewel decorations, which I knew were earned in spirit. By his side was a lady with beautiful features and typically Indian, who was also dressed in white, and there was some flimsy silken material draped over the one side of her head and her face. I knew that she was his wife, and I could even see the small mark on her forehead, which is seen on some Indian women today. There was a path across the sky which went near the valley, which went near the grassy bank now and again, and I saw a visitor call on this Indian couple and greet and converse with them for a while. The beauty and serenity of it all stayed with me as I receded from the scene. This was a short projection during the night, and when I returned to my physical body, I realized that there was a lesson as well as a privilege. This remarkable faculty, which enables one to see details at such a distance, and in this case sense the personality without even moving from a position, is like telepathy, quite easy and natural in the spirit world. It seems that the spirit body is like an electrostatic condenser and charged with power. This power is at the disposal of the mind, and in the case of telepathic sight or telepathy, a fluidic feeler or surge seems to be projected naturally and automatically to whatever the thought is directed. Thoughts are things. Thoughts are self-propelled things. Thoughts can be jet-propelled photographs. In likening the spirit body to an electrostatic condenser, which is controlled by the mind can also insulate or open it to spirit influx or knowledge. And this can happen on earth as it is in heaven. How this installation was penetrated in a drastic but successful manner is shown by the example of Paul's conversion on his way to Damascus, changing him from the orthodox and deeply zealous Saul to the Christian teacher Paul. Well, yeah, it's a good story, it's inspiring, but is it true? Many of his teachings are not understood by most people. What he called the discerning of spirits is now usually known as clairvoyance and sometimes extrasensory perception. Many people often inquire this faculty after having seen evidence that is latent within them. I believe this opens the mentality, which may be electro-spiritual, thus automatically lessening the barriers of maelstrom that was previously adopted. Many fully developed mediums can open or close the senses to the higher spirit vibrations, almost always at will. Well, I think maybe that's enough for tonight. There's an interesting section coming up called Meeting My Higher Self. And as I say, I have read this book entirely maybe a month ago and waited for a while to get, there's a sequel, More Experiences on the Astral or something like that. The sequel was published in 1975, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of new experiences in the second book. They're more not rehashing, but going over some of the experiences described in this book with the advantage of many years to sort of think it over and meditate and learn to be content. But there's not as much in it as I would have hoped, and not as much new stuff or insightful stuff. Anyway, I may feel different about that in a week or two, but right now, that's the explanation. It's been a while since I read this book. It's late at night, and I shall be more enthused tomorrow. Not that I'm not enthused now. But let's look forward to meeting his higher self. I've written about meeting my quote-unquote own higher self, as if you could own one. And it's sort of like, for me, it's a bit like a hotel where all your past lives stayed and your future lives too. And a hotel where you know some of the people on some of the floors behind some of the doors, but not all the people or all the beings, sentient beings behind the doors. Not necessarily a hotel, a bricks and mortar hotel, but a sort of psychic, energetic hotel. That's as best as I can explain it right now. That may seem like bunk to some, but if it does, I imagine you'd like all the things that don't fit to be taken out. but they aren't and they won't. Masses of internal contradictions here, and things that just don't fit the standard conception of objectivity, analysis, configuration, to examine the energetic paradoxes of the spirit world clearly and without skeptical judgmentalism is to embrace wholeheartedly not only all the things in your comfort zone, but all the things that are making life itchy and uncomfortable for you, whether it's geopolitics, religion, family, personal relationships. It's about embracing it all and realizing that none of this would work if there weren't young souls being selfish and ruthless and taking what they can when they can and feeling that it's okay if you can get away with it. Reality is what you can get away with. And mature souls giving up that selfishness and working for the benefit of their brothers and sisters and the general well-being of mankind and animal kind and Gaia, and working tirelessly for what they perceive to be the positive forces unleashed when such things are taken care of, and then getting full of despair and depression when they realize things aren't going to change that much. And the old souls who realize there's nothing you can do to make the world better. All you can do is work on your own personal karma and your own state of mind and bring it into line with cosmic consciousness. None of this could exist if all those types of souls weren't engaged as they are, because they all balance each other out. So getting rid, either here or there, of the figures that you do not like because they contravene your notions of morality, or religion, or smartly run societies, doesn't do any good. They're there for a reason, besides working on their personal karma. They're there to work out their own life journey. And if they tread on your toes as they're working out their life journey, getting rid of them doesn't solve it. It's trying to figure out why them treading on your toes annoys you so much. Anyway, a little bit of cod philosophy there from your old pal Gord. And until next time, this is the Word of God saying farewell.